Hi, this is Robert Kiyosaki, and you're listening to Capital Hacking. This is the most important thing you can listen to today.
All right. Robert Kiyosaki, Mr. Rich Dad, could you just wait a second before you endorse the Capital Hacking Show? We must make a public service announcement. Learn and Grow, your favorite accredited investor mastermind, the one where we can get together at one of these beautiful resorts owned by the accountable equity community and actually learn and grow together. Whether you're an investor today, thinking about it for tomorrow, or have never heard of private investing directly, it doesn't matter. This is an investor mastermind that is going to change the way you see opportunities today. We have 4 already scheduled for the year 2024, 4 in 24. They're found at accountableequity.com/learn-grow. And you're going to find out we have a March event, sign up now, an April event, choose that or sign up for that, an August event, and a December event. And we rotate through the various accountable equity resort properties. It's time to register. Plan your entire 2024. We want to be in community with you. We can't wait to have you visit.
Here's the one. I have a dream.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I can do this all day.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom.
Cinderella's story out of nowhere.
It's in the hole. That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Capital Hacking begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the big show. John, I'm trying, buddy. I'm trying to jazz it up a bit. This is your buddy Josh. World famous John Edwin. Great to see you.
You guys have to be entertained. Josh cracks me up when he brings us in every single show, and I love it. Thank you. Guys, today we have Daniel Del Real. He is an amazing guy, and Josh and I are so lucky to have a good friendship with Daniel. With all the wisdom that he brings to this show, you guys are going to really, you do want to belt up, and you do want to actually probably pull over and take notes. He owns a group called the Del Real Group, and they're the #1 real estate group in the state of California.
You know, and that's true. And if you're not a real estate agent, you're like, well, sure, he's the world's best in California. But more than that, you have to find out, how do we get to where this gentleman in? How can we do it in our own space and place? And I think what he's going to teach you is one big lesson that's going to come through the stories is it's impossible to beat the person who never stops getting up or never gives up. And he tells that Will Smith parable where Will Smith says, the two of us are getting on a treadmill and there's only 2 options that are going to happen. You're going to get off before me, or I'm going to fall. I'm going to die trying to beat you. So his point is, if you just don't give up, even if you're not the world's best at anything other than perseverance, you will always achieve your goal. That's the key takeaway. But there's even more stuff that's going to come out of here. I always say we should look at Daniel's mom as the original rich mom, poor mom. She should have wrote that purple book that Robert Kiyosaki did, and he attributed it to his rich dad, and his poor dad. Well, I could not say it in the show either. It's rich mom, poor mom, Mrs. Del Real.
And it's such a cool interview where Daniel's parents are immigrants. He didn't even start speaking English until he was 10. Man, the guy has grit, but he comes from a family of grit.
And he explains how to help build that grit in your family. So we cover we cover business, and we cover all kinds of lessons. So I think this is one you're going to dig in on. Let's go. John, I do say this almost every show, but can you believe the level of guests we get, John?
It's so exciting. And, Daniel's a good friend of yours and mine. And we're just honored to have you on our show, Daniel. And thank you so much. And we'd love to hear some about your background.
Well, it's good to be on. I think last time I was on was 4 years ago. And it was, I think, other than the GoBundance podcast, talking to John back then kind of lit a little light in my soul, and it made me feel comfortable, speaking on podcasts a little more. So it's cool to, like, 4 years later, I think it was 4 years, maybe it was 3 years. I'm not sure, but
Episode 196, so over 100 episodes. Again, more than several years. You're right.
yeah. But it was great to be on that show, and even then, like we started with, I'm a product of an immigrant family, an immigrant dad and mom that left everything that they knew behind in the hope of a better life for our family. And I saw my parents not know a lot of people, but really pour into that relationship capital on who they knew here. They moved close to whoever they did know, and they did the best they could with that. I was also blessed to see my dad never really go through school. I mean, my mom and dad never finished, second or third grade of school. So academically, they didn't teach me a lot, but they showed me a lot, and I caught a lot from my immigrant family that makes me who I am today. So, I spent 4 years in the Air Force at 18. That's the first thing I did on my 18th birthday is May 20th, 1999. I swore in to the United States Air Force, spent 4 years in the Air Force as a military police officer, security forces, and I got my degree in criminal justice, and I'm selling real estate, right? Go figure. Like, I saw Hollywood Undercover with Harrison Ford kicking doors down, negotiate contracts. I'm like, that's what I'm going to do.
Oh, what movie? I'm writing that down. What movie?
It's Harrison Ford. It's what is it? Undercover Hollywood Homicide. It's called Hollywood Homicide.
And that's a real estate based movie? Or
he's kicking a door down. And he's like, hold on a second, before we kick the store down. He's negotiating a contract and getting a price reduction from the seller. And I'm like, that's awesome. And it was a great movie. But I spent 4 years in the Air Force, and really what it was, I met my wife in the Air Force. My mom, I always told my mom, was like, hey, don't worry about it. Like some of the girls that I dated in high school, I'm like, I'm going to go to Mexico, and I'm going to find a girl that has great values. And I'm just going to marry somebody that's not Californiized, right? And I did the second best thing. I actually joined the Air Force, and I spent some time in Minot, and I met this girl that was from South Dakota, a town of 4,000 people. And her name is Annie. I ended up, she's my wife now. We have 3 kids, been married for 17 years. But I remember she moved up into Minot, North Dakota. There's a town of 28,000 people. And she used to say, like, I don't know how you guys drive in this city, right? So we dated for a year, and then I flew her into California. She flew into San Francisco. So culture shock, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was like that movie where like Encino Man, where that he's frozen in time, and like he's like, what is this thing that you're talking to? And like his mind was blown on everything. I remember my wife coming to my mom's house, and her eyes got super big, and she's looking at the corner, and we had this big orange tree. And she runs, she's like, oranges grow on trees? No way. She's like, grabbing it. And I'm like, so like I had this big gift of just blowing my wife's mind every like couple of months when we went to
That's so cool.
places to explore. And we have 3 kids now, ages 14, 11, and 9. We homeschooled them for 5 years, which is really neat. During my time in the Air Force, I got my degree in criminal justice, had a job at Santa Clara PD. And it was a 6-month before I really started. And my mom, super smart, she invested in some real estate. They never really had great jobs, but they just did a lot of side hustles. My mom sold gold, she cleaned carpets, she cleaned houses. My dad mowed the neighbors' yards, and I got to see that stewardship of like humbling yourself. And it didn't really matter what the neighbors thought. Like, your mission was your mission. And I remember the neighbors would say, hey, is your dad okay? Like, he was driving this old 1981 Toyota pickup, and they were driving the 99 Hummers that just came out, and he moved us in a nice neighborhood, he really invested in our future and that relationship capital. We knew if we were in that area, we would get influenced the right way. And then he humbled himself and mowed their yards, and my mom cleaned the neighbors' houses, and I was out there cleaning houses. So they taught us to be a servant. And at the end of the day, like, your why, your mission has to be more important than what other people think. With the neighbors, it was different. They all cared what everybody else think. My parents didn't really care about that. And that really helped me. I got to see that. And, I didn't really learn English until I was 10. So there's also that happened in my life where, I couldn't articulate myself when I got into, when I came to Modesto. It was all English school. So I had to really work by serving people. right? So that helped me in my real estate business. So anyways, when my mom and dad were investing, I got home, and at that point, my brother was in Iraq, serving with the 1st Marine Division, and they were losing guys, and they ended up coming back with a bunch of casualties and fatalities and Purple Hearts and all this stuff. And then I was in the Air Force, and my mom's like, "You're going in to be a police officer." I was like, "What are you guys trying to do? Kill me?" Right? Like, what am I like? What are you guys doing? So she was super smart, and I remember reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think when it came out, like 2000, 2001. And I remember coming home to visit during Christmas, and I told my mom, I was like, "Hey, I just read this book, and Mom, I'm telling you, like, you could have written this book. Everything that I learned here, you've basically taught me." And she never finished school. She never went past the 2nd grade. So she was super smart. And when I came home, she had her broker come, young guy, young cat, black Mercedes, nice suit. And he's like, he just wanted to talk to me. He came in and talked to me. And I'm like, of course, like, this guy looked great, right? And he's like, have you ever thought about, getting real estate a shot? Your mom and dad have bought some rental properties for me. They've invested. I grew up swinging hammers and painting and rental properties when I was younger. And I'm like, you know what? I pulled in on a Thursday, and I was a guy like took action. So I ended up signing up for real estate school that day and started my classes on Saturday. And I'm like, let me give this real estate thing a shot until I start that academy. And 20 years later, I operate, and I have, as of last year, California ranks teams in the number of agents. So I was ranked the number 1 agent, or the number 1 team in California.
In the whole state.
The whole state.
Yeah. The whole state of agents that have between 11 and 25 agents, and I did it with 13. So, but it's been a rewarding career that's allowed me to take some of the principles that my parents showed me of, it's not what you make, it's what you keep and you invest. Like, my dad never made more than $47,000 a year, but, he was able to retire, buying 10 houses and paying them all off over time. He bought a house every other year, and I saw this long-term game. So I'm like, look, I need to be able to do that. So I put myself in a salary, I think 4 or 5 years into my career, and I treated my business in stewardship. It was never really my money, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this amount of money. I think it was like $110,000 a year. And I'm like, if I could live on this amount of money, then I know how much passive income I need. And I invested the rest. So as my income doubled and tripled and quadrupled and 10X, I always lived on those principles and lived on, I think it was like 20, 30% of my income. And even to this day, that's what I do. The difference is the numbers have just got much bigger, but all that came from, my life, which was, growing up in an immigrant household, and my dad saying, "Hey, buddy, when you look at the streets, you're not, you don't see pavement, you see golden opportunity." And that's just the way we were wired. And just the fact that I saw my dad firsthand quiet the noise of life and what the neighbors were saying, to prioritize what was important to him, also allowed me to do the same thing as I was building my business.
Wow. So many great strands of wisdom that you just gave us. And, something that I was hearing throughout that entire intro was the American dream. That's what I was hearing. And it's interesting. My father was an immigrant, came over as well. And, it's when you grow up in a household where your parents were from a totally different country, speak different languages, they have a work ethic, man, and it's ingrained in us, and it's passed down, and it's important for us to keep that work ethic strong in our family and with our kids. What are some of the ways that you have used your work ethic, Daniel, to trickle down to your kids?
Well, the first thing is the choice, right? And I think so many parents mess this up is, I hear people say I have to go to work, like I have to go to work. And I never told my kids that. They knew that, hey, I'm choosing to go to work. This is a choice, right? We all have a choice. Like you have to choose whether you perform or don't perform, whether you get up or don't get up, whether you push yourself or don't push yourself. It's not that I have to, I choose to, right? So the power of choice, number one. I saw my dad do that. So I try to show my kids that. And honestly, I'm a Christian dude, right? So a lot of the stuff that I try to do is based on my faith. And one of the principles, and one of the only, and John, both of you guys might know this, but because I know I'm on a tribe with with John that talks about our faith walk. But one of the commandments that actually has a reward is what? Right? It's honor your father and mother so you can have a long, fulfilling life in the land he's given us. And so, but if you really think of that, it's because showing my kids how I honor my parents, right? Not just telling them I honor them, but showing them I honor them. Then in return, it's not like, hey, I'm going to do what my dad says. I'm going to do what my dad does. And if I honor my parents, they'll have a long life because they never lose purpose, which in return, my kids will honor me because they saw me honor my parents, right? I can't expect to have a relationship, not have a relationship with my parents, and then try to have my kids have a relationship with me. That's a hypocrite, right? So when I remember reading the Blue Zones with Abundance guys back in 2016, and one of the things that we really learned from it is it wasn't really the food they ate. It was part of it, but it was a tribal aspect of it that these older generations never lost their purpose in the tribe. They were honored and respected by the tribe members. They're all united. And so that's something that I saw my parents, and something that I try to do with my kids. So to answer your question, one of the things that I really do is do it by them seeing me do what I say I'm going to do, because I know that I caught more than my parents taught me because they never really got that academic education. And that's some of the lessons I use today. Now I've learned academically, but I go back to those principles. And so that's why we homeschooled our kids for 5 years, right? I'm bringing them home, right? And so John, you guys saw my kids in conferences, all the time, right? So they saw dad not say, hey, you have to be a lifelong learner. They didn't just hear me say that. They saw me do that, and they saw me go to classes, and they saw me continue to learn, and they saw me get up and do a sport and chase fear, right? So that's one of the biggest things I think that I've done is just not like help my kids with the words that they speak, and at the same time know that sometimes I'm the biggest Bible in somebody else's eyes. They might not have a Bible they're reading, but they're seeing what I'm doing and the actions that I'm taking. And I know that's very true of me seeing my parents when I was growing up. And that's something that I got to show my kids, right? Like I say this to myself all the time. And it's something that I really think of because I struggle. And as men, we struggle with things, right? We guys are just, we're driven a certain way. Sometimes we have personality issues. Sometimes we're sexually driven dudes, and this is straight honest. And I'll be lying if I tell you we don't struggle with things like that, right? But I always ask myself, I'm like, what the things that are going in my mind, the things that I'm taking action on, would I approve my daughter marrying a man like me, right? And that snaps me out of it. I'm like, you know what? No, I need to honor that. And I need to be the man I would want my wife to marry and treat my wife that way. And in return, they see how a man should treat a woman, right? They don't just hear it, they see it, because that's the way that I want my daughter to be treated, and the person that I want her to marry, not by, hey, look, I'm going to go drink and hang out and party, but babe, I want you to marry this guy that's faith-driven, that is motivated, that's going to take care of you, that's family-oriented, and I'm off dicking around playing golf all the time, not paying attention to my family, right? So that's something that I think I really honor and value, and it's something that I'm trying to really instill in my kids by not telling them, but just showing them, being the example in their eyes of what a man should be doing, and what kind of life I should be taking, what I should be creating, and how I'm taking care of my body, how I'm taking care of my family, my wife, my friends, conversations. And they see me in my goods and they see me in my bads, and they see dad apologize, and they see dad and mom get in arguments and then just apologize to one another, and see that you don't have to have your shit together all the time. They see me struggle with things and open up scripture and go back and know that, I know that I'm never alone because there's Christ in my life, right? And one of the gifts I want to give my kids is for them to know that they're never alone, ever, ever, and they will never be alone. Even if their earthly father fails them, their heavenly father will never fail them, right? So those are some of the things that I want to teach them by them seeing dad struggle and be honest and authentic and raw, and then know that, look, I am a man that is constantly working on himself, and and just have a front row seat in that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, Daniel. Nobody is more. I think you're a great speaker, motivational and inspiring me. And that, actually, on the show you and I did before, it was 196, and we called it "Running on Your Own Frequency." And I remember you talking a lot about your dad, the fact that he was able to mow the lawn of a wealthy neighbor, even though he had a house in that neighborhood too, because he was running on his own frequency. His why did not depend on their impression of or opinion of him. But can I go back to something you brought up in your intro? You talked about the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And you said you showed it to your mom early on, like for the first year it was printed. And you said, Mom, you could have written this book. And I want to almost go in for one more minute on this. So could she have been called the rich mom, rich dad? No, rich mom, poor dad. Oh God, I can't even say it. Rich mom, poor mom could have been the book she wrote. Why did you say that? Like, what were one or two lessons that came out of that book that mom could have written?
So very simple. Like my dad, man, they were just so smart when it came down to like the relationship capital side of it, right? And they didn't have an academic skill set, right? But my dad saved all his money and he bought a house in Modesto on the west side of town, which was a shitty part. He came up, started doing some work to it because I think he bought it for like 80 grand or 60 grand or something like that. And he's like, I don't want my kids living here. So he went back, saved for another 2 years, and then bought a house in one of the newest communities in town on the east side of town, way out of his league. We were the milk and the flying white milk, man. And so I lived with a bunch of rich moms. Across the street was a business owner, a physical therapist, owner of a store, salon owner, one of the, a school teacher from the high school that was just launched, a principal, a dentist, right? And so that was our school. So I saw a lot of rich people. I saw them take, like, the only travel I did was with them, right? They took me on their vacations to Monterey, and I'm like, oh shit, this is cool. Or like we would go to McDonald's with them. We never went to McDonald's with my family. But then I saw my mom like clean their houses and clean their carpets and do all that stuff and feed all the kids in the neighborhood. So I saw that firsthand, man. So my mom was the poor mom, right? My the other girls were the rich ones, but at the same time, even though she was poor in money, she wasn't poor in resources and her ability to make shit happen.
She must have figured out. Remember, the code in that book is all about you have to buy an asset that produces cash flow. And it sounds like somehow they bought some of those. Did they keep that one on the west side and start turning it into a rental? Is that how they tripped into real estate?
They still own it now, and that thing is worth $500,000, right? And it's paid off. But my parents bought houses every couple of years, right? So and it'd be an argument all the time with my mom and dad because my mom would be cleaning carpets, and then she got into selling gold. So she had people that would just sell gold for her, and she made some money. And then my dad commuted, right? So my mom was a side hustler. My mom was the one that was freaking working. And my dad was mowing yards, making 50 bucks here and there. Every time they had enough money, they'd have 15, 20,000. My mom would go buy another 2-bedroom house, and my mom and dad would go buy another house. So they bought a house every 2 years, 2-3 years sometimes. And, they over 20, 30 years, they ended up buying 10 houses. It wasn't a shitload of houses. Right now, I think maybe they have 14, but they're all paid off. And
wow.
And went from making, $50,000 a year on a W-2 and some side hustle money to, I think they bring in like 140, 150,000 in just rents now, right?
And
my parents, it's retirement money.
They're with that. No, that's exactly right. And with that, do you think? Remember in that book, the people that look like they have the Hummers and the fancy cars are usually the poor mindset, and then the ones that live frugally are sometimes the rich minded. And it sounds like your mom and dad were always the rich minded. Even though they may not have shown off.
But in everybody's eyes are the poor-minded, but they're rich in vision.
Right.
And so that was one of the biggest things. And we talk about like our frequency, and I tell my kids that too. Like, hey, we're Del Reals. We don't do those things. Like, we run on our own frequency because, again, like life happening for me, it was taught for me in a lesson in the military when I went to the academy, we'd have to clear these buildings out. And we'd have to rehearse, and we'd have to be very clear with the mission and the people that were with us. I had to know what the guy behind me was going to do, what the guy in front of me was going to do. We knew exactly what points and directions we were going to go. We knew what the mission was. We knew how to get out, how to clear a building or whatever it was. And so you would be clearing these buildings and nothing would happen because, you know, if you knew something was going to happen, then you're always prepared for it. But maybe it's like the fourth or fifth building on the third day. Next thing you know, shit just went crazy with they'd have these miles gear and these blanks, and then shots would just start going bam, bam, everywhere. And people would panic, right? People would get scared. And it was interesting for me to hear my sergeant say is, hey, the person that can't silence the gunshots is the one that's going to end up in a body bag or get your buddies killed. And he's like, what I mean by that is when shit hits the fan, like when a gunshot happens, you have to keep moving and trust the guy behind you, guy ahead of you, and know and visualize exactly what you're going to do to be able to neutralize the threat, finish the mission, and come home. If not, and you freeze, you're going to screw your guy in the back, the guy in the front, and the next bullet's going to come for you. And so it was like, look, the guys that could silence the gunshots are the ones that are going to be the masters of their lives. And for us, what's a gunshot? Social media, an election, COVID, right? Everybody else's desires and wants for you, a new car, right? Labels that you want other people to put on you that you're successful. And those are all gunshots, right? So my dad and mom ran on their own frequency and they silenced all the gunshots of all that bullshit. They didn't care what anybody else thought. They had a clear vision. And every once in a while when my dad or my mom got out of sync, my mom would say, or my dad would say, hey, like, keep it together. You know what our goal is, right? We want to provide security for our kids. They want to buy a house for each one of them or whatever it was for them. And just like in the military, like if you freak out, the guy behind you is going to say, move, 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 and you're going to keep moving, right? He's going to snap you out of it. Or just like in GoBundance, when you're aligned with people like that, you're marching in a certain area. If I'm screwing up my relationship, I'll have a guy like, like John, or maybe even you, Josh, that say, hey, bro, like, this is not you, man. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're not honoring your wife, like, or you're not honoring your kids. Like, if you share that vision with other people, like, they're the guy on your 6 and the guy on your 12, and they're the ones that are going to say, hey, dude, that's a gunshot. Keep moving, right? And that's what I saw with my parents. And that's what we mean whenever like, hey, look, we just operate on a different frequency.
I love it.
Dude, that example of gunshots, thank you for teaching that to us, because I never thought of it like that, silence the gunshots, and the person who panics is the one that's going to end up in the body bag, and, and then relating that to life. It's such a powerful lesson. One of the questions that I have written down here is, your mom was really amazing in having the real estate agent come and meet you when you were at a young age. And so how did you go from meeting that real estate agent, getting your license, obviously doing your own thing, but then building one of the strongest or the strongest team in California?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to like, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have an immigrant family, right, that taught me some of the lessons I have now. And then the second best thing I did is join the military, man. Like, I am so grateful, like, for that, because number one, like, when I joined the military, my parents weren't even citizens yet, right? They were residents. So, and I saw them like leave everything behind for this flag. And I saw what this flag and what this country was able to give us if we were willing to work for it. And so me serving in the military, one of the biggest things in the military is the first thing they're going to do is strip you down, right? They shave your head. Everybody looks the same. And what they're trying to do is take all the labels of society away from you. And then you're a unit, right? And one of the most beautiful things about the military is it's a trip. It's like, look, we're fighting to defend what? The U.S. Constitution, right? But in order to defend it, guess what needs to happen? You personally have to give it up. You have to give up your constitutional right in order to uphold the constitutional right for everybody else, right? So that servitude of the country was something that I got to see firsthand. And then September 11th happened, and the war happened, and then you saw it at a 10th level. But when that happened, like, that servitude thing was put in me. Me not being able to learn English and having to serve people in order for them to see my value was a different thing. I couldn't articulate myself, so I had to serve. Reconfirmed in the military again, right, with that service aspect. And when I got out of the military, like, I remember calling my brother. I'm like, hey, man, what are you doing? It's like Sunday. He's like, I'm watching football. I'm like, all right, I don't have anything going on today. I was already selling houses. And I'm like, I'm going to come over. I got some time. And I came over, and I think I was watching 30 minutes of a 49er game. And I'm like, so what else do you do? He's like, nothing. We're just watching the game. I'm like, I'm like, well, forget this, dude. I'm gonna go do something else. I'm like, I just realized that civilians ran at a way lower frequency, right? I just got out of a service where we were at war and we didn't have a day off. I remember our lieutenant said, you don't have a day off. We just tell you a day, you don't have to wear that uniform, right? And so that was my mindset when I got out of the military. It's like, you just never had a day off. So I just took that work ethic and just put it into real estate. And I wasn't the smartest kid in the office. I was 22 years old selling real estate. But I just outworked everybody. And one of the things, and then the market corrected. And that was something that was a blessing for me too, because I remember people dropping out of this industry and smart people dropping out of this industry. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I remember watching this video of Will Smith, and he said, he's like, if they put you and me on a treadmill, two things are going to happen. You're either going to stop and get off, or I'm going to die on this thing. And I'm like, you know what, dude? It's impossible to beat a guy that just won't give up.
That's right.
Right. And that was just my fight, right? That was something that happened in the military. Like, you're just not going to freaking give up, right? It's hard to beat somebody like that. And I wasn't the smartest guy, but what happens in the pursuit of it, I got my wisdom, right? I learned my skill set. Work ethic happened first and my skill set happened. I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm like, my son started playing football, and he sucked bad, really bad. And I was so happy, seriously, because I'm like, you know what? One of the biggest curses you could have is a natural gift, right? And you see these kids naturally gifted, like the world revolves around them. Their parents cater for them. They never really, they're just naturally skilled. And the first time they get punched in the face, they don't know how to respond, right? And here I am, saw my parents, myself, not knowing English until I was 10, starting my business, the military. Like, my life has been being punched in the face all day long. Like, I didn't have a natural skill. Like, I had to outserve and out-earn. Like, I didn't have doors open for me like that. So I knew nothing better but getting punched in the teeth. So I knew how to respond when the market got tough, right? There's a lot of people that just were naturally gifted and smart that didn't have that muscle that has to be earned.
Right, that
just
muscle.
Thinking at something in general, right? And so anyway, seeing my kid not being good and now earning his seat, he has one of the biggest hearts. He's getting better in his skill set now, going into fourth year of football. Like, shit. Like, he knows not only how to earn his spot, because nothing was given to him. He has that work ethic. He knows how to suck, and he knows how to get better. And the first couple of years, he had to use his relationships and cheer his buddies on and help them get better and do all that stuff. And the coaches saw him and just loved him, so they poured a little more into him, just like they did to me when I was younger. But that's just natural. I think that's one of the biggest gifts that we could have, is not having a skill set and having to earn it. And in the pursuit of earning that skill set, guess what? You get it. And then you have to get it behind you. And then you have the ability to take a punch in the chin and be like, dude, that's it. All right, let's go. Right. So it's just a beautiful thing of just how my life kind of progressed through the years. And my dad used to always laugh, because he's like, Daniel, from all my kids, I thought you would be the last kid that would be doing all these extreme sports like Ironmans and adventure races and all this crazy shit, because you had flat feet. You had flat feet and you were overweight. Right. And it's like, naturally I had to work my ass off for everything. Even when I raced Ironman, I would hire the same coach and I would train with another GoBundance guy named Joe. And we would do all the trainings, all the same time, everything, same coach, same food program. And in my mind, I always did one more, because I'm like, look, I just got to do more. I got to do more. I got to do more. And I would probably do 5-10% more training and not tell him. I would just do it, because I'm like, you know what? And when we raced, he would literally beat me every time, right? Because like I'm like, what? When is it going to come easy for me? Like he swims easily, he runs easily, and I'm like, I'm struggling through this whole freaking thing, right? That's always been my life. It's always been struggle, but I've never. I really learned to fight and to really appreciate not the end, not let's say an Ironman or just in anything. I learned how to not have a finish line life, and instead have a through line life, where there was no finish line for me. It was just a line of improvement. You run through the line and you continue to improve, right? So at the end of a challenge or at the end of something, like that's not over, right? It's the progression of life always. Through line is the kind of life you want to live. And so I'm really blessed that shit doesn't come easy to me. Even John, when I was in the gym with you, I'm like, I've never lifted weights in my life. I don't have the genes in my life to be buff, right? I have to work a shitload more. And that same guy ended up doing this fitness challenge with me. And this guy got huge. And we're doing the same shit. And I'm like, well, here I go again. It's just part of my life. I just got to do twice the work. It's just what it is, right? So anyway, that's just been the story of my life. It's probably one of the biggest blessings that I've had, is that I haven't been naturally good at anything, even public speaking, something that I just always have to, just work through, right? And then other people end up saying, hey, dude, you're doing amazing. They speak life into you. And then you end up growing into that.
Well, Daniel, you've been a massive blessing on our show today. One of the things I just grabbed and wrote down, I have a whole page of notes, by the way. It's like I'm listening to a podcast. I don't even know if I'm in a podcast.
I know.
I'm kind of in the audience. But you wrote
talking too much.
You wrote that there is no finish line in life. It's a through line, and that was awesome. What other takeaways do you have, Josh?
Yeah, no, I wrote down a bunch. I run your own frequency is what his mom and dad talk to each other about. So I love that. And I think rich mom, poor mom is such a fun little idea here, because it's so much of what you take away. I mean, you've articulated it here. And for those who really want to dig in on Daniel's teaching on the frequency thing, which I think you guys are picking up what he's laying down, but he did such a masterful job also in 196 talking about that, because if you choose the frequency you're listening to, as he said, the Del Reals do not do it that way. However you said it, right? That's not how we do it. And you're allowed to say that if you help your family realize we're allowed to live a unique life, a special life, our choice. And for me, the power of choice and all those kinds of things. But no, I wrote down a lot of these cool things, including my movie for the weekend, Hollywood Undercover. Harrison, I cannot believe an action movie made you want to do real estate. That's my favorite surprise in this show of all the.
Watch me and let me know what you think whenever you finish watching. It's a great movie.
But no, I mean, Daniel, why don't we also just end on a little bit about how we can learn more about what you're doing and where is the business going now? I do have one practical question about real estate. You're in northern Texas. You're in North California. You're in San Francisco area, right? The Bay Area still?
Yeah, we're east of San Francisco. We're sandwiched between San Francisco and Yosemite National Park.
So transactions must be slower, but I imagine there's always transactions. What is it like today from a ratio point of view in the year 23 going into 24? Ratio compared to last year, 50%, 80%? What are the transactions like?
No, it's in 20 years, I've never seen this before. Rates are high, affordability is getting squeezed, and prices are up 10% in California this year, right? It's really what it is. It's a transactional recession. It's just less transactions are happening because people are rate locked into their houses, and it's a skills market. It goes back again, and I told my team, I was like, look, what we're going to do at the end of 2021, leading into 2023 is going to define the rest of our lives. Because I know that everybody was about to get punched in the face, and that's just been my life, right? What you do after you get punched and how you either run away from it or you dive into doing twice the work for half the compensation and learn a new skill set is how you're going to raise. That's going to be your new level of frequency later on, right? You're going to have that new reference point. A lot of life is trauma. A lot of people have these traumatic experiences. Like some people might say not knowing English until 10 is a traumatic experience. Some people might say some of the stuff in the military is trauma. But you have a choice to use trauma as a residence and reside in it for a long ass time like people do, or use it as a reference point. And so, we taught ourselves to evict ourselves from that trauma as fast as possible, use it as a reference point instead of a residence. Some people will use this market, reside in it, and say, oh, I failed in it, I couldn't do it, blah, 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 the story they're telling themselves. And some people will use it as a reference point as they move over because they succeeded on the through line of life. And now they have a new reference point of what they were able to achieve when they faced a punch in the face, right? So it's a transactional recession. So our team is leaning into skill sets of making calls and connecting with clients and educating people, and again, even on the marketing side, you have to do twice the work, right? Homes are taking longer to sell. Income is being affected a little more. So and then now with this big lawsuit, like, I think we're going to lose half our industry, and the people that stay behind in this industry are going to do twice as much business. It just depends on your ability to take a punch in the face and how you respond to it, and how quickly you respond to it, or how long you reside in whatever story anybody else is telling you. It's a gunshot for us. It's like, it's a gunshot.
Wow.
Silence.
Just because I am not in your space, the lawsuit we're talking about is the one where buyers agents can't be paid, or was that the lawsuit?
Yeah, the big NAR lawsuit that happened, not in California yet, but that might roll over to a bunch of different states.
Yeah. And as far as following your group, though, are you guys putting content out? Is there how can we learn more about all the great things you're doing?
Yeah, so my group is in Central California. That's a beauty. I'm not a secret agent. I'm a real estate agent, so I'm pretty public. So you can follow us. But if anybody has any needs in Central California, we're here and always able to help. But we believe in educating the client. If you teach them, they will come. It's kind of one of the things that we do, and we're the highest reviewed team in all Central California. So I think that, again, that trust is there for our clients. So yeah, if anybody wants to connect, they could just Google my name, and I'm sure they'll find me in a bunch of different locations.
I'm not a secret agent. I'm a real estate agent, so I'm public. I love that.
Love it. All right. Well, thank you guys so much, Daniel. Thank you for all the wisdom that you brought. I think our listeners are going to have to listen to this a few times over.
Amen. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate you guys.
Damn straight. We just got we got to the end of another great show, and everyone listening right now, you're the family and friends. Thanks for staying till the end.
That was so fun. And hey, hit the like, hit subscribe. We're here to serve you guys. That's why we're doing this show. Josh is not paying me. I'm doing this off of my quote unquote sweat equity, because we want to make a difference in your life. And then that ripple effect will continue to touch the world.
Hey, amen, brother. Please check us out on capitalhacking.com, all the social media threads. And yes, I know you've probably already sent this episode to one of your best friends. Thank you. We love you. Just go right into your iPhone, hit the plus symbol. We'll talk to you later. See you next week.
Share.